Hello and welcome to Frank's School. This is my 100th day this second year, and I'm still talking about the trip I'm going to take to Portugal. What I am going to tell you today may not be of that great interest to you. I don't know. It's sort of more personal than going to particular museums. Back in September, August or September of 1970, 43 years ago almost, it was the second time I was ever in Europe, and I flew into Portugal and into Lisbon. I rented a car. I was traveling. I spoke a good bit about this earlier this year. I was with a woman that worked with me in Brazil, and we rented a car and drove north. I think we had it for 3 days. And if I rent a car, if I am with somebody who will drive this May, I think I'm going to try to find some of those places we went to. What we did was we left Lisbon and drove to the shore, to the coast, went down into a little town. See, I don't remember the names. I remember what they looked like, but I don't remember the names. And the closest I can come to that so far on a map looking is a little coastal town called Sítio. But I don't know. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to find that. But that doesn't matter so much to me as the town that's right in here. What we did then, it was the same day, we headed inland. I was the same man back then. I liked mountains. I like mountains now. I wanted to get, and I don't like cities. And I know we went up a river. And you see there's a city here called Coimbra, and then Oporto. And Braga actually isn't so big a city, but Coimbra, I think it was just when we got to Coimbra, instead of going into the city, I went into the mountains. I turned and headed inland. And I went up along a river. And I don't know the name of the river, but eventually we came to a little village that I would say in my life up to that point, it was the prettiest little village I had ever seen. It was on a high spot, going upstream. It was on the left. The road was on the left. You see, I remember it well enough that I'm going to see if I can find it. But I'm not going to take forever driving around. I'm going to see if I can find it with Google Earth or whatever. The church was up on a high spot. You could see the river, and the pensão, they call it, pensión, in Spanish, where we stayed, was uphill a little bit from the church. And there we stayed, had a beautiful evening. And then went on and drove around the Serra da Estrela, which is the highest mountain in Portugal. I think we drove right over it, I think. As a matter of fact, going around the back side of it, we were stopped. By this time it was night. I had not planned this well. And we were stopped because there was a tremendous forest fire going on. And they were stopping everybody and making them get out of their cars to go fight the forest fire. Just stopping them right on the road. They needed all the help they could get. I would have gone. We spoke Portuguese, both of us. But when they saw that we were Americans, tourists, they just said, no, you go ahead. So on we went over the mountain, but by now it was dark. I was running out of gas. I'd assumed that there would be gas stations and places to stop. There weren't. And eventually we drove very far, and me very worried about the gas, and we made it back to that little town, which could be one of these names, right? Not this, but could be one of these names. And anyway, so 2 nights I stopped there. And now to try to figure out what that town was. I think I can do it. And I'll let you know if I do it. But I have a little bit more to go by. The day that we left the town, that day heading north, I drank my first vinho verde. That's a wine, green wine. I didn't know at the time that it was renowned for its vinho verde. Makes me think it might have been September instead of August, because they were in the fields picking the grapes. And it puzzled me that you could have wine to buy. I stopped at a place and I was supposed to have a gallon jug, and they just filled it with vinho verde for me. I didn't have anything, but they got me a jar or something. And I'm not a wine drinker. I basically do not like wine. It's one of the only times I can ever remember liking the wine that I was drinking, and I'd like to try that again. But anyway, we did that, and we also stopped, I believe, at lunch. And I found this. We had a nice conversation with some people in that town, and an older man was so pleased with our conversation that he got one of his books that he had written and signed it. He'd written in there. It's kind of hard to read his writing, but I think he started off writing in English for Frank. Offered by the author to Frank in remembrance of a. I'm not sure. I don't have my glasses even. But anyway, he signed his name, and and he gave the place. It looks like Vila Meia or Vila Meillon. If there's an accent mark here, it would be Vila Meillon. Mortagua. I think it's Mortagua. Anyway, with that, that might help me to find it, and I'd like to go back to that town if I can find it and see what became of that man. José dos Santos Fernandes. He was pretty old. He's surely gone now. And then when we came back, after we came back and we headed back into Lisbon, that day we had to get back to Lisbon, the way that road went, like if this is the river going, and there's the town up on that high spot, and the road goes along it, well, we went down, well, the road went up to the town and back down, I guess, but we went down, and then just for the fun of it, turned this way, and went up over the mountain. And that's where I think we may have come into a city called Guimarães. These are new words to me, I don't really know these. But we drove into this city, and it was market day. Dia de feira, you say in Portuguese, it was market day. And all these farmers had come down out of the mountains or the fields or whatever, and the streets were packed, carrying their goods to sell. We knew the scene because it was just like that in Brazil on a market day. And here we are driving this little tiny car, a couple of American tourists going through this. It was actually a little scary because we were so out of place. And so I don't care so much if I find that, but it might help me to remember where it was. And I also remember that then we turned back toward Lisbon and came over a hill and came down to a really lovely estate or park or something that if we had only had more time, I would have loved to have stopped and looked at it. And then my memory just goes blank. As far as returning the car to Lisbon, I can remember almost nothing else about the trip until we got to Switzerland. But anyway, with these various hints, I've looked at the maps, and I've started. I think Caldas da Felgueira, Felgueira. That's a possibility. Nelas, maybe. I don't know. Peso da Régua, maybe. Guimarães, no, but. And I think I can find a city. And what I'm hoping I can do then is with Google Earth, kind of fly up that river with Google Earth and study it and look and see if I can find it. And if I can find it, this is a terrible drawing, if I can find it, I would like to drive through it and then on to Braga. If it's doable the same day. That might be too far. I might actually stay there. If the pension is not too expensive, I usually stay in hostels. But anyway, that was pretty personal, but it's memories that I have about an earlier trip. And tomorrow I'll tell you about Bom Jesus do Monte, which is one of the things I hope to see in Braga. Don't forget class vocabulary next week, I guess next week. If you want to participate, I'll show you how. All right, see you tomorrow.